Okay. And now I'm going to share the screen. Okay, share screen. Okay. Let's see if I can go to share. Can you see? So you can see what I have on, oops, on the share. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to play. Come on, behave yourself. I got to go all the way back up to the. Okay, so this is Class 2, the book of Titus, Dowell's emissary, which is like apostle or shaliach. He's sent to Crete, and it's about congregational life, part 2. Oops. The challenges, let's see, this is not the right one. Let me go back. And I don't know. Let me go ahead and open recent. You can see I'm really getting to be an expert at this. Let's see. Okay, there it is. So these are the challenges that he really faced that we're going to look at. It's being an example, kind of like, I don't like using the term, but monkey see, monkey do. And that's the hardest thing, is being an example. And you're a young guy. I got to give someone a new, please be patient. I need to give him a new link. How unprofessional, right? Okay. So the hard thing to do is to have to be a example to people who aren't your own age. Like, how can a younger guy be an example to older men? How can he be an example to younger people? Because, a lot of times, speaking with a friend of mine, that he now is the campus pastor of a high school. And what the school did was that they always used to get younger guys to be, to be like the campus pastor. Because they thought, well, you need a young person to set an example and to be a friend to young people. And he's found out, being older, he's 66, that he's actually, the kids are responding to him much more than they ever responded to the other 5 guys who previously had his position. So you could be a middle-aged guy and be an example to an older person, and you could be an older person and be an example to younger people. And so that people are always looking at the leaders of their congregations, and they're always looking generally to find and anything that you do wrong that they don't agree with, boy, they're going to just jump right on you. If anybody, I see people are just nodding their heads. And of course, unbelievers are really going to jump on you for any kind of thing, and you just can't be perfect. But The whole idea is that as a leader and through the Holy Spirit, God enables you to be a leader, an example for male, female, young, old, educated, uneducated, because we could become all things to all people through the Messiah who gives us strength. Can you agree with that? Yes, sir. Has anybody ever got the kind of thing like, well, you're too young to give me any kind of advice, or you're too old, you don't know what it's like? Or have you been in that position where people judged you because of your age? Nobody, or just a couple of people, just nod your head. Here's what Albert Einstein said. Setting an example is not the main means of influencing others. It is the only means. So, you know, there are lots of people who are really great teachers, can give all kinds of words of prophecy and do all kinds of spiritual things, but their personal lives don't match, their public lives don't match their personal lives. And it always amazes me how people can really have a less than stellar personal life. And yet sometimes when they're ministering, it's like if Yeshua was ministering. I just don't understand how God can do that. But setting an example is the most important thing. And I'd rather have a person whose personal life, a person who has character, and maybe is not such a great teacher as my leader, as opposed to someone who can do it all, but really his household is in chaos. So as we saw last week, this whole thing, a tzaddik, because a leader needs to be a tzaddik, a righteous person, connects you with your God without getting in the way. Okay, so just a quick review. One of his challenges was a non-Jew attempting to organize or reorganize an existing synagogue that was predominantly Jews who had come from Alexandria originally, and God-fearers, non-Jews, people from Crete known as Cretans, who were attending the synagogue. It's important to have qualified leaders. Very important to have people who know how to rightly divide the word. Review this whole book, emphasis on sound doctrine, which we saw last week, and I think I have it repeated here, because that means teaching that brings health and doesn't bring disease. And then you have the Torah truth, where you teach what the Bible says, and you don't concentrate on the Talmud, Greek philosophy, Hellenism, you know, all kinds of legends and things. And so people want to study so many things that you don't even find in the Bible. I don't know why they find that more exciting. So his opponents, which we're going to see, were known as the circumcision faction, or the mob of opponents. And they had a large amount of opponents in Crete. Have you ever had any people oppose you in your group? Or people oppose the congregation, and then because you wouldn't give in to their pet doctrines, they just left? Anybody? Okay. Or you kick them out before they leave. So we see that Crete, if you look to the left of your screen, it was an important center of Judaism in the first century. And if you look straight up, you see where Athens is. You see Corinth and most of the cities that you see from Shaul's missionary journeys. Okay, sound teaching is a medical metaphor referring to the healthiness of teaching found in the gospel and stands in opposition to sickly craving, unhealthy interests of
Hey,
the mob
Rabbi,
of opponents. Yes,
I don't know if we're seeing the same slides. Are you changing things?
I have. What are you seeing?
All we've been seeing is the book of Titus. It hasn't changed from
It
this
hasn't
first.
changed at all, really?
No, sir.
Okay, what about now? Did it change? Did not
No,
change?
no, it's still the what's
Can't.
live, I think, was what you weren't wanting to show us, or that was
Okay.
from.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to share the screen. Um, okay, what do you see now?
The book of Titus,
Now, what about now?
the challenges Titus faced.
And it has it has a man and a woman and all that.
Yes, sir. I think we're
Okay,
good now.
we're
We're
good
good.
now. Thanks a lot, Nathan. I need to go to sleep and wake up again. So when we see you see the examples, kind of like we have where we live, we have ducks, and the ducks all follow their mother in a row. And you see the woman, for example, she's on the phone and reading the paper, and her daughter's on the phone reading the paper. Sorry about that. So you see that setting an example is not the main means of influencing others, it's the only means. Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. A tzaddik connects you with your God without getting in the way. Let's see if I got another. Yes, it says, I got another person. I need to send them the link. I really, really, really am sorry about this. Cancel. How do I share this thing? Come on. Oops. Hang on. Forward. There you go. I will do better next time. Review. Okay. So you have a non-Jew attempting to organize or reorganize an existing synagogue that was prominently Jews and God-fearers. You see this guy with where it's showing the guy? Yeah. So you have to have well-qualified leaders. And for me, character is everything, not ability. The importance of sound doctrine. You know, people say, oh, God gave me a new revelation. And I say, where's that in the Bible? Well, it's a new revelation. We've all had, God told me to tell you a new revelation. I said, Mark, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, my face doesn't usually hide my thoughts very, very well. If I had a nickel for every time someone said, God told me to tell you X and such, whatever, I would be so rich I could pay off the national debt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of times people, when they talk like that, they just don't want to be questioned. They expect you to, take what they say at face value and obey. And if you don't, if you question them or you don't obey them, without hesitation, then you're disobeying God. And even in the New Testament, it says that we're to test the spirits. So if someone does not want to be tested or demands that they be obeyed without question, well, that tells me that they're a false spirit.
Yeah. Years and years and years ago, before Jonathan Cahn was married. Everyone knows who Jonathan Cahn is, of course, right? He used to sit with me at I'd sit with him at the Messiah conference, and he had this big afro, and he wasn't married. You know how many girls came up to him and said that God showed them in a vision or a this, that, or the other, that they were supposed to be their wife? It says, this guy says he needs a new passcode to get into the. What did you do, David? What did you do? What did you do when you, I'm sorry, what did you do when you clicked on the link? Did it ask you for a new passcode?
No, it shouldn't ask you for a new passcode. It just asked to launch, and there was a little prompt that came up, but I clicked yes on the prompt. So, but it shouldn't ask for a passcode.
Okay. Another thing that happened is a funny story, is that I don't want to tell you who, but there was a guy, he was in my office years ago, and some girl, some lady, nice lady, burst into the office and said, "Oh, God showed me who I'm supposed to marry." And so this guy, he's a Messianic rabbi, he said, "Well, I hope it's not me, because I don't even like you." And she ran out of the, she ran out, actually, of the office crying, and she never came back. Let me go to the next slide and tell me, for some reason, do you want me to try to do something with John Pop so he can come into the meeting, and so you guys can be patient for one more minute so I can get him into the meeting? Again, I have no idea what the problem is with the, it said I need a passcode. Ugh. Okay. So I'm going to go to Facebook, and I pull this over. Okay. Yeah. This is really bad. I don't know how to see if I can do something here. Please, 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 please be patient. I have to just, okay. Okay, send something to someone here. One more. Okay, Polanco, let's see. And if someone else has a problem, I'm just going to have to just tell them that there's nothing really I could do. Okay, let me go back. Here we are. Okay. So we're going to look at verses 110 to 215. Are you ready on that one? Okay, the link, okay. So here are the opponents. The circumcision faction. That's what it's called in verse 10 through 16. So basically, when you're in a Messianic congregation, or probably other congregations, people have their pet doctrine. I know, for example, one time I was trying to promote some kind of meeting that we were going to have, and I stopped at a Pentecostal Holiness Church, and before they even wanted to hear what I had to say, they wanted to make sure that if I was baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, I wasn't saved, but I needed to be baptized in the name of Jesus only. And people are always bringing all kinds of doctrines. They're always going to oppose you, but you, as the leader, you have to be strong. You know what you believe, what you teach, and maybe you just tell people, look, you could believe whatever you want to believe, but here this is what we believe, and if you start to share it, you just basically need to not continue anymore. So there were lots of. Did you ever have any problems where people brought in their pet doctrine? And unless you embraced what they had to say, you were just really not a man of God. So they were Jewish believers who were Pharisees. And they insisted that to be a believer, to enter into the covenant, you had to be circumcised. It wasn't like an option. The only way, instead of Yeshua being the door, circumcision was the door before you entered into the door. And then you had people, particularly, we're talking a little bit about Messianic congregations, God-fearers who had become believers. So, well, I learned from my rabbi, and I learned in the synagogue that this is how you're supposed to sing this. And these are the prayers you're supposed to say. And this is how you're supposed to chant the Torah. And this is the kind of food you're supposed to eat. And this is the kind of carpet. So sometimes, people who were, people become enamored with Judaism, or they become and they fall out of love with Yeshua. So of course, I believe that there's a balance between the two, but one becomes more important than the other.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's a problem. And then you have zealous believers from the nations. And what that means is that, I think that if you're really a spiritual person, you're going to pray 87 times a day, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and to set standards that you can't even imagine. And then they had native-born Cretans who were Gnostics. We're going to look at what that means. So, can someone read these verses here?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Okay.
For there are many, especially from the circumcision faction, who are rebellious, who delude people's minds with their worthless and misleading talk. They must be silenced, because they are upsetting the entire households by teaching what they have no business teaching, and doing it for the sake of dishonest gain.
Okay. So the thing is that not only are they teaching these things, they're charging people, oh, come to my seminar. And in my seminar, I will teach you in 5 easy lessons how to prophesy, or how to pray for people. And I guarantee everybody that you pray for is going to be healed. And then it ends up costing a whole bunch of money for the seminar. Have you heard those kinds of claims?
Yes.
Really? Are you there, John?
Yeah. I am.
You never ran
I-
into any kind of people like that?
I have, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put money gain on it, like they're trying to sell. Friars are trying to sell a formula to get in touch with God. And so they come out with these formulas.
Yeah. Did you ever see the guy who wrote years ago 70 reasons why Yeshua was returning in 1970? And then he said, oops, I miscalculated. 72 reasons why he's coming back in 1972. And things like
Yes.
that. Yeah. It's crazy to me. Okay. How about this one? Lies. Believers from the nations are saying we're obligated to be circumcised in order to enter into the Brit Chadashah, into the new covenant. Has anybody come up with that? Or been confronted with that? You have to be. Now, do you think it's okay for believers who want to be circumcised? Is that okay if they haven't been circumcised?
It
Very
seems
much
that
so. Very much so. I can. Yeah, this is one of my biggest things. Of course, I'm pretty sure the other members of the Beit Din have filled you in on my viewpoint, Rabbi Yosef.
No, I haven't. No, they haven't filled
okay.
me in on your viewpoint.
Oh, conversion is one of my, I don't like to say pet doctrines, but I'm very passionate about it. I find the anti-conversion stance to be elitist and discriminatory.
Uh-huh.
And for 1 Corinthians 7:18, the original Greek does not lend itself to that interpretation. And I don't want to go into a whole rabbi trail about that. But like in my case, growing up, people always thought I was Jewish because of the way I looked. And later on, my DNA test showed that I have 90% likelihood of Jewish ancestry.
Uh-huh.
But from what I could piece together, my ancestors were forced to convert to Christianity on pain of death.
Mm-hmm.
But I only have circumstantial evidence to show that.
Right.
And I've been in the Messianic movement for close to 10 years, and I was told I cannot be a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
I was being left out of Jewish circles. I was not being invited to Jewish only events that the synagogue was hosting.
Mhm.
And when I confronted the leadership about that, they said we only recognize people as Jewish if they were born Jewish. And so when I left the synagogue shortly after that, and when I came to my subsequent synagogue, and I talked to the Beit Din about it, and they said, "Oh, you've long surpassed our requirements for conversion," and so they recognized me as Jewish right off the bat. Now, Rabbi Greg was kind enough to give me a Biur Lechumra, and so, which I'm very happy to have, but I could not bear to continue to identify as a non-Jew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you knew my full testimony, you'd understand why I feel the way I do. And
Mhm.
Even a very passionate anti-conversion rabbi, after listening to my testimony, he even said, I can see why you're so passionate about conversion. So yes, I do feel that if a non-Jew wants to be circumcised, he should very much be allowed to do so.
Amen.
Anybody have any other any feelings about that? One way or another? Because some people say, well, if you get circumcised, then and you're saved, then you get unsaved.
Oh no.
I know. Okay, so see if we can
You
go-
know, I want to say something about this. If I may,
yeah, of course.
about a year and a half ago, I had God chose me to have an honor that a lot of rabbis don't get, and I was deeply touched by it.
Hmm.
I knew there was a gentleman who was 46 years old, born to a Jewish mother and father, and for reasons related to the Holocaust, was not circumcised. And he grew up in a nominally Reformed Jewish home. And he and in his mid-40s, he wanted to be circumcised. And God enabled me to arrange that for him.
You didn't do it, did you?
No, but I did oversee the ceremony, and even the doctor was very touched to be part of it. So
So let's go on here.
Yeah.
So this is a big issue also. The Cretan people from Crete, because today if you call someone a Cretan, it's an insult. And all Gnostics denied that the supreme being came in the flesh, which is contrary to what it says in John 1:1. The word became what? Flesh and dwelt among us, claiming Jesus, Yeshua, to be merely a human who attained enlightenment through gnosis or knowledge and taught his disciples to do the same. So basically he's saying, taking that Mormon doctrine that everybody can be God. And in the Messianic movement, there's a lot of people who do not believe that Yeshua is divine. And they want to say that one with the Father means something that it doesn't. How many have heard of that? I mean, to me, when I the first time I ever read the New Testament was the day after I had my experience where God spoke to me about Yeshua. It was very, very clear to me, without prejudice, before I went to any kind of congregation, before I went to seminary or whatever, that the message of the New Testament was that God in some way manifested himself here on earth. And John 1:1 speaks about that. And then in the book of John also, or Yochanan, Yeshua said, well, for what miracle you want to stone me? And so what does it say? Well, we're not going to want to stone you for any kind of the miracles you did. Is because you, being a man, claim to be God. And if you talk to any anti-missionary, you know what I mean by anti-missionary? A Jewish anti-missionary, an Orthodox person, and you'll read any of their literature, they understand that Yeshua claimed to be divine, and that he didn't reach divinity because he learned some kind of secret knowledge. It was God come in the flesh. So God can do whatever he wants to do, however he wants to do it. And that's what makes sense to me. Does anybody, people can have anybody have an opposing point of view? Or that's pretty much, people share that view?
I don't have exactly an opposing point of view. I do not believe that Yeshua was a mere human being, conceived by a natural intercourse between Miriam and Yosef.
Right.
But because Miriam hadn't had her menses yet, or menarche, I'm sorry, then she was still a virgin under Jewish law. I mean, I have heard that argument. That's not what I believe. I do not believe that God or that Yeshua is. Well, I don't believe in the concept of the Trinity as Christians understand it.
Okay.
I believe that Yeshua was a manifestation of the presence of God in human form.
Okay.
I don't think that contradicts the idea that God is non-corporeal.
Well, the Bible doesn't use the term Trinity or triunity.
Right.
It speaks
Right.
it speaks about this unique what? What's the right word? I mean, the thing is that, you know, basically, as I understand things, it's just like God manifested himself in Yeshua. Yeah. Divine.
Right, and I do agree with that. I know Michael Brown likes to the way he addresses that point is, like the Shekhinah is a manifestation of God's presence, but it's not God in his fullness. And and he tells, and also even anti-missionaries find it hard to disagree that Yeshua could be a sort of Shekhinah in human form.
Well, you know what Corinthians says, now we know in part. We're looking through a glass darkly. It's something that's really hard to understand. But when we see him face to face, we'll understand.
Right. And although I would tend to agree that God in his fullness is non-corporeal, I don't believe that contradicts Yeshua coming in human form. I don't believe that contradicts the concept.
No. So the thing is that remember, Yeshua even said, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So I don't quite understand it completely, and I don't think I ever will. Okay, here's another big problem that you have to deal with: tradition. Yeah. You know what they say? I think it was the seven deadliest words in any group, congregation. It might be 8. We never used to do it that way. That's how so-and-so, that's how Pastor so-and-so did it. That's how Rabbi so-and-so did it. And I remember when I first, because I wasn't aware of the Messianic movement when I first went into ministry. So I was a part of the Pentecostal denomination. I didn't know any different. That one group believed that you shouldn't go roller skating because that was dancing on wheels. They didn't believe in mixed bathing, which meant men and women couldn't swim together. They didn't believe you could cook a meal in your building, but you could bring something in and warm it up. And that I know we had one guy who said you shouldn't wear a tie because his version of the Bible says Judas hung himself with a necktie.
No.
And then he also believed that you should men shouldn't wear short sleeve shirts because their arms look like women's legs. And you might be tempted. And he called women who wore pants harlots. Tradition, I know we laugh, but there are all kinds of traditions you put on your, like in Talmudic traditions, you put on your sock one way or another, and you shouldn't the position of how your bed is, you have to, I forgot, which way do they carry you out from your bed when you're dead? So your bed shouldn't face that way to the door. It has to face the other way on the other wall. because that was like a superstition. You know how like when they carry someone out through the door, like when you're dead or in a in one of those when the ambulance comes. Well, your bed shouldn't face your bed should face the opposite way from the door, and all kinds of things, you know, that like where's that in the Bible? You know, there's also, for example, there's the type of work that's forbidden are the 39 types of work that were listed in the building of the Mishkan in the wilderness, because the instructions for the building of the Mishkan are sandwiched between two passages about observing Shabbat. You get that? So there's something about Shabbat. Then we have instructions on the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the wilderness, and then more verses about observing Shabbat. So, for example, one of the 39 subcategories of work is sorting, because like people had to sort stones and pieces of metal and whatever. So on Shabbat, if you wash your eating utensils, it violates Shabbat if you take out of that pile of knives and forks and spoons, if you take all the knives and put them in one pile, and then you take all the spoons and you put them in another pile, and you understand that's like a violation. Another violation was that, and this was based on previous generations, you couldn't use a baby carriage to go to synagogue, because if the streets were muddy and the streets were dirt, then if the wheels of the baby carriage make a mark in the road, it's like plowing.
Oh, brother.
I know. And in some places, some Orthodox synagogues, some people find it strange that they might see the toilet paper already torn and in a pile, because the act of tearing whatever you tore when you were building the tabernacle, there was all kind, there's all kinds of little kinds of, there's all kinds of interpretations. But as my wife pointed out, if people are taught that this really pleases God to tear your toilet tissue, that's kind of maybe, I'm not trying to make fun, but to do that before the Sabbath, because you'd violate the Sabbath if you tore it. If you really believe that, then you do it. But a lot of people are bound that way. Anybody know some other kinds of traditions like that? Have you heard of them? And people spend their whole lives trying to observe all these kinds of, all these kinds of traditions, and then they lose their focus on, what does God want us to do? To walk rightly and to love mercy, do good works. Anybody familiar with any of these kinds of traditions?
Yes.
Yeah. So tradition, here's another one. Tradition states that the connection of Jewish women to candle lighting dates back to the matriarch Sarah. So here's the Midrash, and Rashi cited it. A candle burned miraculously in Sarah's tent from one Friday evening to the next. When she died, the candle and its glow vanished. However, when Isaac's bride, Rebecca, moved into Sarah's tent, the miracle of the light returned. I don't know. But why spend all that time studying these kinds of traditions when it has basically not a lot to do with being a believer?
Mm-hmm.
Just a question there. I had understood that the tradition of lighting the candle on Shabbat came after Babylonian captivity.
Yeah,
How
no
long
one can say,
has the
I don't know.
tradition exist? Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no I had heard it said that it was done in honor of the fact that the menorah had been extinguished. The light of the menorah had been extinguished.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
So
I remember one time, for example, the tradition of, and you'll see that this is addressed in chapter 2, and we're going to move pretty fast, is that a married man is not allowed to be alone with another woman, even when it becomes even your own daughters when they reach the age of puberty. So one time in Israel, I was driving by myself. It was a rainstorm. I was driving from the city of Sfat back to where we lived in Catherine. And on the road, there was an obviously Orthodox woman. It was pouring, it was storming. And she was getting soaked. And I saw her. And I looked at her because I went slow. And she knew, and I knew, that I shouldn't let her in the car. She wasn't going to get into the car, even though she was going to be soaked. And she was really, really shivering because, in that kind of situation, I think that Yeshua would allow, let the lady get in the car and dry off. But the tradition was so strong that you just couldn't. Okay. One thing that was really important, and I could see I need to reformat some of these slides, is that Shaul, as a Pharisee, was quite familiar with the notion of the purity of heart, which manifests itself in righteous behavior, observable in both the private and public sector. So this mob of opponents, all these groups, basically he was saying their motives are not pure. They're in it for themselves, not for other people. And remember, also in Shaul writes, circumcision, being circumcised or not being circumcised doesn't really matter. The most important thing is faith expressing itself in love. Okay, chapter 2. And if we need to, I want to take these slowly. But again, Titus needs to be an example. We all need to be an example. Because when you're an example, you influence different groups of people in lots of ways. So here's this young guy, relatively young, and he's supposed to influence various groups to be an example by being an example. You don't tell people what to do. You show them through your behavior what should be done. So it's this whole idea of the communities were pretty local and they weren't, so spread out. So I think, like Nathan, probably because your congregation is very popular. How many people go to that place? Thousands?
I'm sorry, Rabbi, are you talking about that go to the main campus?
Yeah, the main campus.
There's a couple thousand.
Couple thousand. And they come from all over the place. So they're not all from like one neighborhood.
Yeah, from all over the city.
Yeah. So the difficult part when you have a larger group or everybody's spread out is how do people stay connected, and how can you make them feel that they're part of a family? And some leaders have the skills to be able to do that, and others don't. So you have to realize is that not all families are large. Some families are smaller than others. And so if you have a community, you're setting an example, if people are serving the Lord, and you have 10 people in your group, So what? That's successful,
Yes.
right? So it's
You're
better
right.
to build a family than to draw a crowd.
Amen.
But other people are very skillful, and they have administrators and they have the organizational structure where people feel like they belong to a family, even though they're all spread out. I think that that's quite wonderful. So the first people that he's instructed to teach are the older men. Do you know who these guys are? One's Bernie Sanders. There's Mel Brooks
Mel Brooks.
and Larry David. Did you ever see the Larry David show? What's the name of that one? On HBO. I used to watch it when we had it. But trying to tell when you're a young guy and you're trying to instruct an older person on how they should behave or conduct themselves, that's really difficult. Because they're going to tell you you're a young whippersnapper, what do you know? Or you don't have any experience in life. So here's what they tell. First, you got to be serious. You can have a good sense of humor, but you have to be a serious person as well. So it's a term which means not to have a diminished mental capacity due to the consumption of too much wine, to be sober. I don't know if anybody has ever gone to an Orthodox synagogue, but while we were in Israel, that's where we mainly attended. And when we first came back from Israel, that's what we mainly attended. So at first, so after on Shabbat, after the service, you have a meal. And in the Hasidic tradition, one of the things you do is that you drink. Even the rabbi drinks vodka.
At the Farbriggen?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're having a discussion, and the people are just like, they get plastered, basically. And it's very, very interesting cultural kind of a thing. I remember one time when I was in Israel and I was on my way to the yeshiva class, they needed another person, because they needed 10 people because there was a bar mitzvah. And so you had to stay, and they served pure vodka in plastic cups. So I didn't want to take it, but no, you had to have they call it l'chaim. So I had 2 plastic cups full of vodka. And I called my wife on the phone and I said, honey, I don't think I'm going to make it home right away because, but, that's just part of the tradition. So you need to be sensible to merit respect because of personal character and conduct. People have to learn how to respect you. Sometimes people won't respect you. To remember, I might have said this one time, is that when we were first at Arona Kodesh in Florida in about 1981 or 82, we invited this couple to our home, and we played board games. We sat on the floor and we ate pizza. People never came back because they couldn't imagine that their rabbi would eat pizza. There was no pepperoni on it or anything, but it was a normal person. But 20 years later, they remembered me and they had me do like a funeral for them. Can you imagine that? Who has been judged here for their youth? Because who are you? They're too young, or they don't want to speak to you because they want to speak to someone else. Anybody? Anybody want to give an example?
I remember after, was someone chiming in?
Speaking.
Oh, yeah, I remember after Beth Avinu, we were leading another congregation for a short while down in Hollywood. And one of the individuals that would come every so often he made this comparison. There's certain people that you could learn under. And he was giving an example of numbers. Like if a person's a 4, then you could, if you're a 3, you could learn under them. But if you're past that number, then it's harder, more difficult. So this was an older gentleman, but he just kind of gave me, I mean, he was more courteous, but I could sense that he was looking for another individual more learned years. So, but the impression was that, yeah, well, you need to kind of wise up a little bit, learn a little bit more, and it's like, yeah. But also remembering it was an encouragement is what Rav Shaul mentions to Timothy. So don't let
Okay.
anyone despise your youth.
Mhm.
Listen, that's important. It can be very impactful.
Anybody else would like to share something personal? We are recording it, so maybe you better not say anything. You might get sued. Okay, let's go to the next thing. Oops, come on. Technology, let's go. Self-control. Self-control or temperance was one of the 4 cardinal virtues advocated by both Jewish and Gentile writers. Aristotle, you know who he is? Homer wrote, I believe, Iliad and the Odyssey. Philo of Alexandria and Josephus. And this admonition to be self-controlled was given to younger women as well as younger men. Because I think women have a tendency to be, when they're married, a little bit more mature, more self-controlled. But when you're young, and especially like a young guy, how many of us, I mean, did a lot of things that were really out of control. I don't know how my foster parents even put up with some of the crazy things that we did. I think how many guys believe that guys are more out of control than ladies, than women? Or you think teenage girls nowadays are really out of control?
Yeah.
No one wants to say anything.
I mean, 30 years ago, I might have believed that, but from what I've observed over the last, so many years, I don't believe that anymore.
You believe the girls are more out of control than the guys?
I don't think either one is more out of control or less out of control than the other.
They're all out of control.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and because there's, I have to be able to, sometimes I only have one eye, but this is the prosthetic eye, but sometimes when people say things that are just so like way out there, I have to make sure I don't roll my eyes, or give some kind of like this. Oh. Did you ever want to do that? You have to just kind of brace yourself. So, Mr. Nate, does your wife ever pat your hand and say, no, hey, just hold on, no? Yeah. I used to see my mother-in-law passed away at 95. When my father-in-law would get, a little anxious, she'd pat his head and say, now, Bob, just, hang in there. So, I mean, it's just so hard. Have you ever wanted to give a message where it was you just were telling people off? You just wanted to you were just like, you had it and you just wanted to tell them. You just gotta keep it under control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, this idea of sound in their trust, which means you have to, it's really meaning sound in their teaching. Men, because it was addressing men, should be well grounded in the knowledge of what constitutes sound teaching, as well as the ability to impart the knowledge to the members of their own household in a trustworthy manner. So Here's one of the things that I learned that a lot of people have not learned, and especially young guys, when they teach, they don't know how to end their message. And the guy says, well, now I'm going to conclude. And then there's like 7 conclusions. And it's very distracting. And then they conclude, they say, well, that's it. And really what the whole purpose, the structure of a message, this is a little bit, is that you have a premise that you're trying to get across. And what you're doing is that you're fishing. You're trying to get, all good speakers are taking people on a journey of discovery of biblical truth, kind of like fishing. And you want them to come alongside you. And then as you're presenting things from the scriptures, from the Bible, to get them to acknowledge that what you're saying is true. So that's like pulling in, that's like hooking. That's the analogy, fishers of men. You're drawing in the people. And then at the end, then you get you give people an opportunity to acknowledge and confess that they agree with you. So that's why I always used to end before I prayed with people. And basically part of my conclusion was, you know, it would be something like, I said, pray after me, you know, Abba, I thank you for your word. And I thank you that you are my redeemer. Like say I was teaching on redemption, or that you're the one who gives me peace. And I thank you for doing that. And not only acting on my behalf. So you're basically, in your conclusion, you're getting people to repeat your points and come into agreement with you. And then you pray for them. But then, you know, so when you're concluding, sometimes people will say, and we need to trust God. Oh, by the way, the word trust comes from the Hebrew word this and the Greek word that. And it's formed by this. And then what you're doing is that basically you're letting people off the hook. Does that, everybody get that kind of analogy? But you have to learn how to stop. And most people can't handle in a preaching setting more than 40 minutes. Otherwise, they're just like, you put them to sleep. You need to, you know, so it's really, really so important just to keep it simple, relatively simple, an easy conclusion, and then a prayer of acknowledgement. And I think that works the best. Because I still have people call me and say, I remember what you said 20 years ago, or they still have my notes. You don't want people to, you know, fall asleep. Okay. To love people. This is the Greek word agape, which can be defined as the highest form of love, describing God's unconditional love for mankind and mankind's reciprocal love for God. We love God because he first loved us. And perseverance, the strength of character to remain patient, loyal, and faithful to God during the storms of life. You have to be able to learn to love all kinds of people, not just a certain group or a certain kind or a certain intellectual level. And that's what's so great about Yeshua. He could love leaders and rulers, and he could love lepers as well, and prostitutes, equally. It's unconditional. You know, I remember one time someone said, I tried to reconcile with them, and they said, well, I'll reconcile if you go before the congregation and confess all the terrible things that you did to me. That's not, you know, forgiveness is unconditional. It doesn't bring up the past. Really difficult. and you have to just be strong. And and I sometimes I just can't get patient. I just sometimes lose my patience. Loyal, especially during the storms of life. And if you're a leader, your whole life is a storm.
Yes.
I think so. So here's going to be an interesting point. I'm going to try to wrap a lot of this up. For the older women, who in turn should teach the younger women. Interesting verse. So did you ever see this, what I have here? Could someone read this? John, can you read that?
What verse?
Just where it says notice.
Oh, notice that Titus does not directly teach the younger women. He assigns this task to the older women. This is due to Jewish laws of gender separation, Yehud, which in general prevents males from having direct contact with females who are not their spouse or immediate family members.
Yeah, so there's a book called The Passionate Torah, Sex and Judaism, edited by, this was a good book. And it's amazing, even though I did spell check, I see that there's some errors here. So it was like the story that I told about the lady who was in the rainstorm and I couldn't pick her up. And I remember years and years and years ago, there was a Messianic couple. They lived in Israel, and they became, so they're still believers. They became very, very, very Orthodox. And I made the mistake of reaching out to shake this guy's wife's hand, who I knew for a long time. And guess what? She pulled her hand away. There's the whole idea of touching. There's also another tradition about the separation, is that in Orthodox Judaism, men are not supposed to listen to female singers because it might cause you to become aroused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and also there's another tradition that says that if you're at a meal, you shouldn't let a non-Jewish, if you're single, or even if you're not single, a Jewish male should not let a non-Jewish woman pour him a cup of wine because he might fall in love with them. Pretty strong wine. But there is a very, very strict separation. You know, that's the whole idea of, in synagogues, they have the mechitza, the wall of separation, where men are on one side and women are on the other side. It's to prevent from being tempted to engage in any kind of inappropriate touching and hugging. And you know how like people in congregations like to give each other a hug and a kiss sometimes? Well, some people will hug and kiss in a more, there's more to it when they hug you and they kiss you. But you could see this whole idea in Titus. He couldn't teach the unless there was probably a big group setting, and there was the mechitza, that he couldn't teach younger women directly because someone might fall in love with you. So for you younger guys, or anybody, you know, oh, rabbi, oh, pastor, your messages are so wonderful. You think we could have a private Bible study? Oh, you know what? No one ever listens to me the way that you do. And you know, and so say you're a married person and you've had a rough day and you have the kids and the bills and the whatever, and that's all you hear. And then you have someone who's flattering you, telling you how wonderful you are. Those are the words that spark the relationship. So I won't be with a in any kind of setting, if I can avoid it, alone with someone of the opposite sex. And sometimes even somebody of the same sex, because nowadays you don't know what you could be accused of.
Right.
It's just a lot safer.
Mhm.
But you know, oh, so this whole idea, oh, thank you for your teaching. Uh, can I give you a hug? That's kind of where those things start. It's very and it's a lot of times it's unintended consequences. Okay, verse 3, behave the way people leading a holy life should. This is understood in the sense to be reverent and devout in their deportment. And it's like in your ministry and who you are, as if you're serving in the temple. That's how you have to see yourself. You can look at these notes and some of these notes in the book. Shouldn't be slanderers. Prohibition against lashon hara. The tongue is a fire, a world of wickedness. The tongue is so placed in our body that it defiles every part of it. Blah, blah, blah. You know, I used to sometimes, I made the mistake if someone would come from one place to our place when I was younger. I thought, well, it must be because that pastor or that rabbi doesn't know what I know. And then I would tend to listen to what they might say about the other person. And you know, you shouldn't be listening to what other people say about anybody else unless they're present. It's so easy, especially because people want to flatter you. It's just really really difficult. Then people always get mad at me. Well, I just need to tell you this. No, I don't want to hear it. Well, I want to tell you what so and so. No, if you want to tell me, let so and so come with you, and I'll listen to what you have to say. Oh, I'm leaving this place because you're always taking that other person's side. Okay. You can go visit Rabbi Mario Lopez. Otero. Teach what is good. Godly behavior and principles are taught, they're not instinctive. You know, they said, what did somebody say? Just because you're born in a garage doesn't make you a mechanic. You have to teach and you have to model behavior. Children need to be trained to do what's good. And an older woman needs to be a positive role, an example of what it means to be a godly wife. You know, in Israel, in the Haredi, the Orthodox community, people have lots of kids. And one of my cousins, at one time, she had a 1-year-old daughter when her 18-year-old daughter had a 1-year-old daughter. But there's a support system of older women, middle-aged women who have been through, you're having all the children. The community helps take care, members of the community take care of one another. So older women need to be positive role models. You never stop being a parent. To love their husband and children. And that was in a time of arranged marriages. The wife's role was central in setting the tone for a peaceful, loving home. Okay, we're going to go on because I wanted to. Again, self-control. What do you think it means, Gloria, to be self-controlled?
Well, definitely, it makes me immediately think of the bridle on the tongue, right? In the book of James, to controlling what one says, and of course, controlled in bringing every thought to the subjection of Messiah, right? all those things.
And you know, when you're alone and you've been watching kids all day or whatever, and you get together with a bunch of people, you just start talking. And it's just so easy to criticize.
Yes, that's for sure.
Okay, just 3 more slides and we're gonna end on this note, and then we'll pick up next week. To take care of their homes is a sense of having compassion and acting kindly towards all the members of one's household, including servants. Okay. This, I want to wait till the next time. Submit to their husband, what that means. So basically, it means that, and then I want to look at is that, you know, we are meant to hold each other up. And one person really shouldn't be dominating the other person. Of course, someone has to be the final authority or decision maker. So theoretically, what I would try is that the male has the ultimate right to make a decision. Sometimes I call them command decisions. But I learned the hard way is that, you know, I made a mistake until I kind of have learned this, mostly learned this after being married 50 years, is that I know that if I really want to do something bad enough, my wife will defer to me, and I can. But I have been foolish to to use that right, especially if I know that she's really opposed. So, like, you know, I'm opposed, I don't agree with you, and the other reason, but this is what you think we need to do. And that's one of the tensions. Sometimes you do have to do something, you know, and make a command decision, so to speak. But most times it's better to wait until you're in full agreement. So I know someone in my household is listening to this, so I'm going to have to do better at that. But I want to talk about the theological basis for submission. Okay. Again, this whole idea of example. In this way, God's message will not be brought into disgrace. Those of the circumcision faction and other opponents of sound teaching as taught by Shaul, Titus, Apollos are always looking to point out any inconsistent behavior of Yeshua's followers as a way to discredit the message of the gospel. People are always looking. You know, how can you do this? You're a leader. How can you do this? Say that you're a believer. And when you're in a smaller community, I'm gonna end with one story, and those that can stay will stay. The first congregation that I was the leader of, before I was in the Messianic movement, I was a pastor. It was in Western Illinois, a town of 500 people, one stoplight, one gas station, one Red Fox, and one Piggly Wiggly kind of, you know, that town was divided by railroad track. We used to live in a mobile home, and when the trains would come through in the middle of the night, it would check our trailer, you know, that we lived in. So it was dominated by one family, a brother with his 10 kids and his brother with his 5 kids, the grandparents, and blah, 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 blah. So one of the sons was the big shot in town. He drove a Firebird. He was handsome and all the girls loved him and all that. But he really wasn't sincere or pure in his way. So stupid me, I give a message on the prodigal son, right? About returning to the father. So I stepped down from the stage and I walked right up to where this guy was sitting. And I said, so and so, this is referring to you. In 10 seconds, that whole church cleared out, like 40 people. And then we had an evening service where 4 people showed up. My wife and I, and two of the elders. So I've done things like that, And then, but the next week, you know what happened? Well, you didn't know what happened. That next Sunday, the place was packed. And this guy, he brought 10 high school kids with him, and they sat in the front row. It was really kind of fun. So sometimes you have to kind of make those command decisions, and you live by what you say and you die by what you say.
Mhm.
But they're always looking, to point out, like, look at what you did, And they used to call me the Jew boy rabbi or Jew boy pastor before, and that's kind of where it ended. So anybody have any kind of comments? I'm really sorry about the messing up of the links, the discombobulation of the slides and everything. And I promise that I will try to do better. Was this okay for everybody?
Yes, thank you, Toda.
I just want to make sure.
Yes, thank you very much. So we can conclude then that the congregation was established most likely at Shavuot. And
Yeah, right. So from last week, we
Mhm.
see that in the book of Acts, chapter 2, that there were Cretans and Syrians who were present.
Yeah.
And so that when Shaul came to the island of Crete, there was already a group of believers
Yes.
there.
And that Titus's mission was to basically reorganize a synagogue that already existed.
Right, that had been basically led, as far as we know, by people who were untrained, who were
Mhm.
trying to find their way. And
Yeah.
we almost got through chapter. So that's why I had to be very careful to be an example
Yes.
as to what to do. So in chapter 3, there's
Mhm.
a few more things that can be addressed that we could finish up next week, next Tuesday at the same time with a better link.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like I like to ask, Nate, do you have any comments you'd like to share with us?
Not that are coming to mind. I mean, throughout the whole sharing, there's stories popping in my mind the whole time.
Yeah. So as a young guy, it's hard to be in
Oh,
a,
are you kidding? I still look young. Nobody thinks I'm in where I'm at right now. They all think I'm in my 20s. All throughout my life, it's always been, you're too young to whatever, but I've always just had a heart to serve in the community. And
yeah, and then you look younger than you are.
I appreciate that. I'm told it's the vitamins I take.
It must be the vitamin. Okay, Gloria, what about Mark? Anything you want to say?
Well, you don't think I've talked enough tonight?
Well, do you have any other things you'd like to share with us?
Oh, no, I think I'm good for tonight. I'm sure I'll have more to say later.
Okay,
But yeah, no, actually, yeah, I have sometimes I do get taken for being younger than I am. Well, I actually got taken for 30 the other day. I was like, oh, I'll take that.
Oh.
But
okay,
yeah.
John, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, in addition to the other men, I was also taken to be younger. And I think, again, the sound teaching doesn't matter how young or old you are. I think the sound teaching really does establish you with a certain respect. I can understand why Shaul was really trying to really teach Titus to regardless of the age, that he be respected and honored. And so these teachings are so critical, because it's not only he's able to teach it and have the protocol with the women, and dealing with the men. He dealt with the whole family. When you deal with the whole family, you end up dealing with the whole congregation. And so, you have to, each one has a function, each one has a testimony, each one has a influence. And I really appreciate this study.
David?
Can I say something too? I know I
I'm not sure
wasn't.
who it is. Oh, hi. How are
It's
you?
Laura.
Hi, Laura. How are you?
Doing good, Rabbi. I just wanted to mention something about circumcision real quick, because I'm kind of on the medical side of circumcision too. And circumcision is better health for anybody, any of the men's, because it's as you get older, there's a high chance, if you're not circumcised, of infection, of cellulitis, of other things, and it's no bueno.
No bueno. Okay.
So just to let you know that we always input that when John speaks of circumcision as well.
The benefit. Yeah.
The benefit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I was circumcised on the 8th day, because I think it'd be very difficult as an adult for that to happen.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, that's, Jewish men are always trying to get back at their parents for being cut up on the 8th day. David, do you want to say
Yes,
something?
well, one of the there were quite a few things, but I'm trying to remember exactly what some of those things were. No, one of the points that wanted to touch on, we kind of moved on quick, was the deity of Messiah. And one of the scriptures that foundational scriptures that really touch on the subject is Hebrews or Ephraim chapter 1 verse 1. Or verses 1 through 3. I know that one's a very powerful one, and also
I mean, he's the exact image of
yes, the
Yes,
very
yeah.
essence.
Mhm.
So
You might. Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, I do understand how was it there others may come off seeing Yeshua as just being a human being. And it's, in one sense it's understandable, but what we see is that, well, no, there's more to his person, his essence.
Yes.
Even throughout the scriptures, there's a relation to that his essence is from before time, and even was it some of the apostolic writings relate to that.
Exactly.
But anyways, there was a few other things, but I think we kind of covered it.
Well, we can continue for those after we give a couple more people a chance. Those who want to stay, we can continue, and those who need to leave can leave. Okay, Donato, do you have any words of wisdom for us?
Yeah, I was enjoying this tonight. I don't really have much to put in tonight, but I wanted to say thank you for having me aboard and listening in. It's my 42 years of walking with the Lord and being in the institution of what we call the church or the messianic congregations. You do face a lot of stuff, but in the end, I wanted to pop in before, but it wasn't the right time. The Spirit gives life, the letter kills. That doesn't mean totally that the letter is wrong, but a lot of times we have to yield to the Ruach, to the Holy Spirit, because all these traditions that we're facing, they have nothing to do with the Spirit.
No.
And I'm talking about the Holy Spirit. And yes, so thank you for having me on, and I look forward to the next class.
Okay, two more people now. People might not recognize Donato, but he's famous for something. He fished a Cuban boy, out of the Atlantic Ocean. Tell us who he was, Donato.
Oh, Elian Gonzalez.
This is the fisherman who fished him out, Elian Gonzalez. I don't know if you remember that story. When was that? How long ago?
Well, yeah, well, it's a lot of years now. It was 1999 going into 2000.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting, Rabbi Yosef, is that I was contacted the other day by the media and to want to give a word for the newspaper. Elian now has become a parliament member in Cuba, in Havana, this young man. So, I mean, I don't know how great that is because we're in opposition of that kind of regime down there. But amazing that, you know, I was a part of his life.
Wow.
Amazing. Okay, Rosina, you have anything you'd like to say? Rosina. Are you
Her
there?
audio never connected, so I don't know if she's.
Oh. Okay, Polanco. Anything you'd like to say?
No, Rob, just glad to be here. Great, knowledgeable men and women. I learned a lot today.
So where are
Just-
you located?
I'm located in New Jersey, sir.
In New
Yes, sir.
Jersey.
Yes, yes.
I don't know why I thought you were in South America. And where's your family from originally?
Dominican Republic.
Dominican Republic.
Yeah. But we
Okay,
are stationed
so-
here in New Jersey and
And you have a Messianic congregation there?
building it, lifting it
Building.
up from the ground. Yes, yes. So all the help we could get is the best thing we could get.
Okay, we'll stay in touch. So anyway, those of you who are coming to the conference in Columbus, Georgia, starting on Friday night, who are arriving early on Friday, we're going to actually look at some passages from the Talmud, beginning with Pirkei Avot, which talks about the chain of transmission from Moses to the Pharisees. We're going to look at some of those traditions that affected how and why people submitted to the authorities of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. We'll take some time to really discuss that. So we're going to start at 1 o'clock on Friday.
Will you record that? Will that be recorded?
Maybe someone who has a that we could record it on our camera. I mean, on our phone, right? We could try to record that.
Oh,
Someone
yes.
will remind me to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so anybody, I mean, thanks for putting up with again all the technical glitches. Sorry that which made us end at 9:46. I'll try to be more prompt and better in maintaining the time. So if you want to stay, you can stay. Otherwise, bye. And Nate, I think am I having a meeting with your son on Monday again, or give him another week?
Oh, he's good. That was a good time.
Okay, great. Okay, so whoever has to leave, tell your dad I said hello.
I will.
Okay, and I think Eva's coming pretty couple days from now, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom. Thank you, Nate.
Is this meeting adjourned?
No, well, it's adjourned, but for those who want to stay and cover some other subjects, we can. Feel free to drop out if you need to or want to, or if you have any other things you want to discuss, we can. Anything else on your mind, John?
No, other than we'll be arriving there on Thursday for the conference Thursday evening.
Yeah, well, that's when I'm arriving. So I'll see you then. And if you want
Sounds
to
good.
join us on Friday at 1 o'clock, great.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it.
Thank
Please
you.
tell Marty hello.
I will.
Okay. Bye-bye.
David, do you have anything else?
Let's see.
So why do you
Well, I did-
why do you think people have such a hard time with the divinity of Yeshua? Why is that such a hard thing?
I've spoken
difficult.
to Kim about this, and this, I mean, this term, at least for me, it seems to apply. But the divinity of Messiah, to at least in my view, is more of a paradox. Is because it, I mean, he is divine, but it's the understanding of how to, I won't say explain it, but more so of how